Hey y'all, my name is Savannah Toll. I'm the owner of Plant Savvy. We are a full-service interiorscaping company. I want to talk about fertilizing. I feel like some of the, main issues or questions that clients come to us with is, what is a fertilizer? How do we fertilize? And the do's and don'ts. So let's get into it. First off, why fertilize? Plants are creatures, and in order to maintain them, they need nutrients in order to survive. There are micro and macronutrients that they need in order to be happy and healthy. One of the greatest things that I learned in my schooling was the concept of the wooden barrel theory, which if you have a wooden barrel, here's a photo of what I'm talking about here. We have a wooden barrel, and each of the planks on that wooden barrel is lower. And if we assigned a micronutrient to one of those planks on the barrel and filled it with water, if one of those nutrients is low or one of those barrels is low, that water is only going to be able to go up to that point. Otherwise, it will spill out from there. So if one of those macro or micronutrients is not up to the level that the plant needs, the plant is not going to be happy. When we're in interior settings, it's important for us to maintain some sort of nutrient levels with those plants for them to survive. With us kind of playing God and having houseplants in our homes, we're taking them out of their natural habitats and putting them into kind of like an experiment low-key. Indoor plants are not able to get natural nutrients, and so we must add to them so that they can get some form of nutrients. This is especially certain with you repot them and they have a new soil. The nutrients in that soil only last for about, 30 days to maybe 3 months. You're going to have to replace that eventually. Some of the key nutrients within fertilizers are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen are good for the leaves. It's the foliage, just what makes this beautiful green leaves. It helps with the chlorophyll, which is what makes plants' leaves green. So the nitrogen is a super important part. If you see a plant that has yellowing leaves randomly, a lot of times it's a nitrogen deficiency. So fertilizer is going to help with that. Next is phosphorus, and that's what's roots. That helps with the root system. That's what's really, really important. The root system is the most important part of your plant's health. You don't see it, they're under the soil, but without a good, healthy root system, you're not going to have a healthy plant. And then next is potassium. That's just like your overall health for your plant. Those are your general macronutrients. There's a ton of other micronutrients, which we'll put them up on the screen. But your general need is those 3 macronutrients. When you see fertilizers, the different types of fertilizers, you're going to see this ratio right here. This is called the NPK ratio. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And that is telling you the ratio of these within this bottle. So for ours, we really like using Super Thrive Foliage Pro. We use this at all of our accounts, and this is just a 936. And that's just so that our general health, our nitrogen is usually a higher number just because we are mostly working with foliage plants. It works well with our plants. This is a liquid plant food. So the 2 different types, or there's 3 technically, but the 2 main types of fertilizer is slow release and fast acting, or liquid plant food, or water soluble. So slow release are like those pellets that usually come in the plants that you pick up from like a big box store, or in most soils you'll see they're like green or yellow. They're just little pellets, and those work a slow release, as when you water them they will slowly release fertilizer into the soil. I found that with slow release, it's a little bit harder for you to control how much you are fertilizing. Sometimes growers will just throw like a big handful in there without thinking about it. That can lead to a chemical burn in the roots and also over-fertilizing on the plants. And eventually that also runs out, so you don't know how much you are fertilizing. We like to use water soluble because we can control how much we are fertilizing and when, which is a really amazing thing because, you can only repot so many times and add in pellets, so I think this works really well for people who want to fertilize but don't want to have a super hands-on process. So we just add this into your water and then water as usual. You want to make sure you're reading the instructions. On this specific bottle, there are different types of production. So are you using, maintenance? Are you just wanting to maintain the plant? Or production level? Are you adding this as a folicular spray? Depending on how you are applying this fertilizer or what you want to use it for, it's going to have different quantities to use per gallon. And so if you have like a gallon, container, it's going to tell you like 1 teaspoon per gallon or tablespoon per gallon. And then you just add that in. Slow release, it lasts longer. And then it also has, it's low maintenance. It lasts longer. So you usually apply it and then you can let it do its thing. But the cons to it is that you don't know how much you are fertilizing, and also the pellets will eventually run out, and the soil has to be consistently moist for it to be actually fertilizing. So kind of choose what works for you based on your preference for fertilizing. Again, we really like the liquid fertilizer. Another fertilizer that we really, really like is Phosphorus. They have, water soluble kinds, which liquid plant food, which is really, again, really easy to use. And they have different ones for what you're trying to do. Again, every fertilizer is going to have the ratio down below. So you see, grow big. This is a 644. So it's a higher nitrogen level. So you're thinking like luscious big growth, leafy greens, that kind of thing. This is a 284. So this is for buds and blooms. Depending on your nitrogen ratio, you use fertilizer for different things. This is a more organic, for organic gardening. This is like 0.5, 0.7. So this is a really low fertilizer, but it's made from worm castings and bat. Ooh. So if you want to, do more organic gardening, Phosphorus is a great option. And then next is that we've really been using this year also from Phosphorus is this fruit and flower. I take a cup and then mix it in with my soil when I'm doing, outside gardening. You can also use this inside for, in-ground plantings or even container plantings, but I have mostly used this outside. It is a 463 fertilizer, and it also has active soil microbes, which soil microbes are amazing. They talk with your root system and create a beautiful relationship within your soil. And soil is where the root system lives. And again, root system is an important part of the overall health of the plant. So ensuring that you have, soil microbes and that it's not a sterilized soil, which sterilized soil is not a good thing for growing plants. You're trying to mimic as much as you can from outside to inside. Sterilizing your soil is not what's important. Seeing the little mushrooms growing on your soil is a good thing. That means that you have, a plethora, a great environment within your soil to where your plants are going to be happy. So this has been a great organic soil fertilizer. It will tell you how much you should be watering based on, if this is a new in-ground planting, a more established plant, or a container plant. Another organic fertilizer that I really like is Arbor. All of their products are for more organic gardening. Here is a photo of them, very sleek bottles, very cute. Track what is going to work best for your plants. So some plants like different types of fertilizers. So look and see what maybe a plant likes potassium more, or a certain plant likes more nitrogen. Look and see what your plant needs. You don't want to be applying stuff just for the hell of it. That's why we like Foliage Pro. At least for most of our plants are off foliage. If you're using blooming stuff, use a different fertilizer. But when to fertilize. This is important. I say fertilize when your plant is actively growing. And what do I mean by active growing? Is your plant pushing out new leaves? Now is the time to fertilize. You don't want to fertilize the plant when they're dormant. They are sleeping, they're eepy. Why are you going to give them food when they're eeping, So you want to make sure that you are fertilizing when the plant is actively growing. Usually in in our industry, people say we stop fertilizing when we get into the ember months, like September, November, December. And that's because most plants are going dormant. But we also are living in controlled environments. So some plants are less likely to go dormant in the winter. Rule of thumb, usually in the growing season, spring and summer is when you'll fertilize, and then in the fall and winter, you'll stop. If your plant is actively growing, you can fertilize. So it depends on, what is your goal for this plant? Do you want it to grow really big and beautiful? Just decide on what is going to work and not work for your plant, because every situation and every environment is different. But Good rule of thumb, actively growing, yes. Dormant, no. Spring and summer, yes. Fall and winter, no. No. And if you hear the rain, it is raining outside, so it might have a little bit of ambiance going on. A little bit of ambiance. Okay, so how to fertilize. I say follow the directions, because over-fertilizing, they can overdose. So be careful. And what overdosing looks like, or over-fertilizing, is you'll have these like yellow tiny spots on top of the leaves. It's not going to hurt the plant, but also aesthetic wise, you don't want to just overdo it. A lot of times people will also read the directions and also dilute more based on, just so you don't overdo it. There are some species of plants, like some of your variegated plants, some philodendron plants, that just don't respond well to over-fertilizing, and even following the label is going to cause those like over-fertilizing symptoms to show up. So sometimes diluting it more is a good idea. Again, it just depends on what your goal is of those plants, and just keep an eye on it. You can always just stop and let the plant grow back. Again, if that yellow spotting shows up on your leaves, that's not going to go back to normal if you stop fertilizing. The new growth should go back to normal. Just keep an eye on it. You can always trim them away if you don't like the look of it, but it might not kill your plant. It might. Who knows? Just don't overdo it. And then here are some common mistakes. Common mistake number 1, using too much. Read the label. This is like everything in life. You just want to make sure you're reading the label. Using too much and feeding too often. If you're feeding too much, you're using too much and you're feeding too much, it's just going to cause over-fertilizing. So sometimes you can do it once a month, just a little, ensuring that they're getting what they need and without, going too much. If you're wanting growth more often, you can feed more often, but I wouldn't do it every week. Every other week would be fine, depending on how much you are adding to your water or adding on top. Like if it's a slow release pellets, you probably only have to do it every 6 months or so. Using the wrong type. So again, taking a look at that ratio is going to help you decide on what fertilizer can be used where. My main takeaway, I think, is going to be know your ratio, know the type of plants that you're trying to fertilize for. So like an orchid, you want to use a fertilizer for blooms. A Fox Farm has a big blooms fertilizer. Foliage plants, higher nitrogen. But for the most part, a balanced ratio of all of them is important. Like if you have one that's like super high in nitrogen and then super low in all the other ones, just be careful. You just want to make sure that when you are using these products, maybe start with a more generalized one. Like a 3-1-2 is a good one for most fertilizers, so you can't go wrong with that. Make sure you research your plants, follow the directions, and you can't go wrong. Everything else is fine with your plants. You recently repotted it, or it's been living in its home for a while, and your lighting hasn't changed, your watering hasn't changed, but your plant just seems to decline. Then you might want to check into fertilizing. You're really going to see some crazy growth in your plants, especially if they aren't pushing out a lot of new growth. And I just really think that it just ups your level of plant gain. Really. But yeah, let me know if you have any other questions. We put out videos whenever we decide we want to. Try to do it once a month. Thank you for following on, and happy planting.